Hey, everybody. Welcome to the True Commercial Real Estate Podcast. This is the self-improvement segment that we do every week. And today we're going to be talking about buying properties with zero money down. So, Aurelian, let's kick it off. Let's go. What do we
That's
got?
pretty hot topic. Would
Yeah,
enjoy that. The
it is.
promise of buying with zero down. How does
Yeah,
that work? How is that
yeah,
possible?
yeah.
So there are different ways to do it. You can do the one way is to do second mortgage. And usually you the first person you turn to for a second mortgage is the owner. And but you know the whole concept of having skin in the game. So I think it's when I did an interview one day, and the person was explaining that it's better to wait in the negotiating process until you've spent some money on the property and on the deal. For example, you've had an appraisal, you've had an inspection, and you show some commitment. So the owner sees that you're dedicated, and also, you know, it can help to have a letter accompanying your offer, so that you tell the owner, the seller, a little bit about yourself, so that they know. Because if you ask for a second mortgage, you're asking them to invest in you. You know, often when we talk investment, we talk about investing in a team. Well, the seller, if they offer you a second mortgage, they invest in you. So you want them to get more comfortable with you. Two ways to do that. I would recommend to write a letter to tell more about yourself, and also spend some money during due diligence to show that you're committed to the purchase, to the property. That reassure the seller.
Yeah. No, it's good. That's all good points. It's great. For those of you who don't understand the second mortgage or understand what that is, let's say you're buying a property and you need to put 80% is what the bank's bringing and you owe the 20% down. You're either getting that 20% mortgage through another private source, you're getting that second mortgage through maybe a home equity line or through refinancing one of your other properties, or just borrowing against the equity from your other properties. But one way to do it, as Aurelian's talking about, is actually getting the owner to finance that portion of the deal. And yeah, those are all great points into how to get them to do it. And the reason he's saying that is if you just go out and initially offer, say, hey, I want you to owner finance the 20% and we'll do 80, they're thinking maybe this person's not real, maybe they don't have enough money, maybe they can't actually close this deal. So to show that you're legitimate, I love the idea of writing the letter, maybe with your track record and stuff like that, to show that you're a real deal, and that this is just part of getting it done. Typically what I like to do is I like to share, especially if I've got capital expenses that I need to put in the property, is I'll share like a before and after photo if I can, like I'll mock it up, or if I'll show them what I plan to do with the property and say, look, the reason I'm asking you for this is because I can only put so much into this property and still have it be a good deal. And I have to put that money towards the rehab and, executing my plan. So that's one way of getting them to kind of see why you're asking for this, instead of just, hey, I don't have any money. Can you do it? Now, if you don't have any money, don't be afraid to offer it anyways. They may say yes. And then, they say, yep, that's fine. You've got the money for closing costs and the appraisals and inspection and maybe some other funds on the side. And this deal doesn't need that very much money. And all you need left is this little section for the owner to finance. Don't be afraid to ask for it. That's one way to do it. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes, the worst that can happen is no, and no is fine. And another thing is important to have a solid business plan and make sure that the income can cover the second mortgage. Otherwise, that's not good, for obvious reasons. So you want to be conservative in the way you underwrite, and make sure that your financials support it, and make sure to include some vacancy. What I like to do, it's not always possible in commercial, but when I consider, for example, a plaza with 13 units, I will divide 100% by 13, and that's the vacancy rate I'll consider. What happens if I have one, instead of using, or 3%, which is advertised, I'll just use the number I find that way, which is in case I have one vacancy. And also charge a little bit more for property management, because usually, if you buy a smaller deal, like, if you're a beginner, that's fine. But property management companies are going to charge a little bit more. There is a minimum payment they will charge. So it's not going to be 3.5%. It's not going to be 5%. It's going to be a set amount. In my case, it was at least $875.
So you have to factor that in when you're looking at your second mortgage. Make sure you have all those things factored in, because you may not be able to afford it. A deal that was cash flowing with 20% down may not cash flow when it's 100% financed. So no, that's great points. And again, we had mentioned a few other things. You can do a second mortgage if you have equity in your home, or if you have equity in another rental property. You can cross collateralize and say, if you have $400,000 in equity in another property and you can borrow $100,000 from that as a down payment, oftentimes a bank will do it. So check with your bank first too, because some banks will still want you to have a certain percentage in.
Yeah,
They,
good point.
no matter what the deal is. I've talked to banks that said, hey, if I find $1 million property, it appraises for $1 million, and I've got a great deal at $500,000, they say, well, you're putting 50,000 down because we want 10% no matter what. You want your skin in the game. So, and some banks won't. Some banks will say, whatever that appraisal is, we're at 80% of that, or 70% of that, or 60%, whatever that is. Talk to them about that, and make sure you have that going in and understand your bank's financing requirements. So yeah, second mortgage is a great way to do it. What are some other ones? You got any more?
Oh, just another comment.
Oh, sure.
Find the importance of skin in the game. So a bank versus an individual seller, the seller is going to be a little bit more flexible in terms of how they define skin in the game, like we initially mentioned.
Sure.
But otherwise, yeah, I think there are different ways. If you don't want to, if you can't, but I think just one thing, I really like that about commercial real estate. There are many stories out there of people who've done it with nothing, starting with nothing, and to me, that's the American dream, where you can start with nothing, you work a lot. And for example, you mentioned earlier, you have your you invest your you show your track record to the seller.
Sure.
So by work and showing that you have experience and you've worked it, that's one way of convincing that you have a sweat equity and in the deal.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's yeah, that's what I really like about it. And otherwise, you can raise capital if you have a track record. You can do. There are different ways to do it, and we have a very interesting podcast coming up about how to create a fund. So we'll discuss funds, and we've talked equity with a past interviewee, Paul Moore, who discussed self-storage. So these are also ways to raise capital. It's not your own money; it's someone else's money. And you're the sponsor, and you're the one executing on the business plan, and we're using other people's money.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whether through syndications or through funds, if those terms are unfamiliar to you, go look them up, check them out. It's a way of raising funds to get the deal done. So those are great ways to do it. You could do a joint venture. You may not have to do a full syndication, depending on the size of the deal. If you have a friend or a close relative or somebody that's a colleague of yours that has the money and wants to partner with you, that's a way to do it as well. Here's a weird off the wall one. Is a lease option, a master lease option. So for those of you who have not heard of a master lease option, so let's say you find a property that has, it's a railings example. He's got, let's say there's 13 units in this retail space. You can go to that owner and say, hey, I want to lease the entire premises from you under a master lease, meaning, the taxes, the insurance, everything's going to come to me. I'm going to pay them, and I'm going to pay you a lease rate for the whole thing. But whatever the split is, I'm going to collect all the rents. I'm going to pay all those expenses, including your lease, and then I get to keep whatever the split is. It's a way for you to enter into that with just a lease, essentially, of that property. So you're not going to a bank, you're not going to anybody else, you're not putting a huge down payment down, you're just leasing that premises. But you want that option. So what you'll do in advance is you'll negotiate an option to buy the property. So you're going to say, I'm going to lease this property at $5,000 a month. And I want an option to buy this property sometime in the next 2 years for $1 million. Well, what you can do, because you're leasing that property from them and because you're taking over management of it, you can then fill up all those vacancies and get the property to now where it's worth $2 million, let's say. And then you go back to your bank and you say, hey, I've been managing this property for a year. Look what I've done. I've got all these leases in place. I would like to buy it now and I need to finance it. And now they're going to look at it and say, not only do you have a track record on this property, you've got a track record, you've built up these leases, you've shown this NOI increase and it's worth $2 million. Yeah, 50% loan to value. Here's your loan, and you can get into a property with no money down that way as well. So
yeah, a lot of respect for master lease agreements, and I haven't done one yet. I'd love to, and yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, I've tried a few. I haven't gotten anybody say yes yet, but we're trying.
Really?
I usually come to every deal with with 2 or 3 options, and one of them is almost always some sort of owner finance option. One of them is almost always some sort of master lease with an option to buy, and then I'll usually give them a lower number. That is, if I have to buy it from you outright and go to the bank and do that traditional route, here's what I'll pay you.
Yeah, that's very smart in terms of negotiation tactics,
Mhm.
because you bring them into the, give them options, which means they're already saying yes to something. They just need to choose now.
Yeah. Yep. So that's it for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome. If anybody watching this, you're probably gonna see it on YouTube, or you're gonna see it on Facebook, or any other place. Comment below if you have any other ideas. There are a bunch of them out there. So I'd love to hear your stories on how you've gotten into properties with little or no money.
thank you. Well, see you all next week.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.